Alright, for today's critical thought, we're going to be returning to the topic of tutorial design, but we're going to be focusing on open-ended tutorials and why they just don't work for game development and for teaching someone how your game is played. Now, we've talked about tutorials many times in the past, and we will probably keep talking about it in the future. But in previous discussions, I talked about two of the three kinds of tutorials. The first kind, of course, is the guided tutorial. This is the, hey listen, press the analog stick to move. Hey listen, press A to jump, and so on and so forth. Typically used for games aimed at the casual audience or for kids, and again, Nintendo makes heavy use of it to try to get as many people into their games as possible. The next kind is the organic tutorial. This is when the tutorial itself is built into the game space itself, as in the levels are structured in a way to teach the player essentially learning by doing. Games like Portal, let's see, I'm trying to think of some really good examples all the top of my head, and none are coming to mind. Maybe even something like the Talos principle as well. Typically, organic tutorials work well in action-based games, when the player can basically see one-to-one what am I doing and what's the result. And when they work, they can be very effective at teaching the player, as essentially the game never stops. If a new mechanic is introduced, it will either be used by an AI player, or there may be like a little video or drawing on a wall, and then the player is then given the chance to use it. And because the learning is built into the difficulty curve itself, it basically guarantees that the player will learn things in the order of importance and the order of complexity as well. Now, with that said though, what we're talking about tonight is the concept of an open-ended tutorial. And we typically see this actually a lot from the independent space, and specifically from games that feature esoteric or unique mechanics. The example that brought about this video I don't want to mention because I don't want to put this game in the spotlight here. But open-ended tutorials always follow a very similar pattern. You'll start the game, you'll hit yes, new game, begin the tutorial, and you'll be taken to the main game screen, and you'll get like a little pop-up in the corner that says, hi, welcome to blah blah blah, or you are stranded on an island, find your way out. And then you wait, and you wait, nothing's happening. You think, okay, maybe I have to click something on the screen to start a tutorial. Maybe I click the X up here and it'll bring up another tutorial message. You do that, nothing happens. So you sit there, you're waiting, and you go, okay, maybe I'll just start pushing buttons and moving my mouse around. And then maybe something will pop up saying, press the left mouse button to move, or press the right mouse button to start adjusting the camera. Meanwhile, everything that's on screen right now is not being referenced or even alluded to as to what's going on. So you may click something, you may move, something else may pop up saying, you need to gather so-and-so. Okay, you do that, and then there's nothing. And the commonality in an open-ended tutorial is that essentially you have pockets of information and a very wide gap between them. Now, this is not the same as a dynamic tutorial. Dynamic tutorials are when the tutorial messages themselves are modeled or will be displayed based on the skill level of the player. So if I'm playing a platformer and I am an expert at it, and I go from start to finish without any stop, I'm not going to get one tutorial message. But let's say I'm a new player, I start playing, I get to the first platform and I don't know what to do, a message will pop up saying, press A to jump, you can leap over barriers. And again, the tutorial messages and everything else is only showing up when it's relevant. In open-ended tutorial design, there is nothing. There are no connective tissues between tutorial messages, and the player just kind of left to wander around trying to figure out what's going on. And this is not good when it comes to tutorial design. As I said a minute ago, in games that feature open-ended tutorials, the entire UI is laid bare to them without any explanation as to what this means. In the game that I played, there was a ton of information like all over here that I have no idea what I'm looking at. And I played the game for a good 15 to 20 minutes and it was never referenced at all. And that is horrible. As we've talked about before, the main screen of your UI has to be explained to the player because this is what they're going to be looking at for however many minutes or hours that they're going to be spent playing. If I don't know what I'm looking at, how am I supposed to figure out what's going on? Now, the other problem when it comes to this kind of open-ended tutorial design is that it's not properly referencing in the order of importance and complexity. You may get like a basic message like press this to move, or you need to gather, I don't know, poppy seeds, anything like that. But I'm not being given the context as to what's going on. Should I be moving around? Am I supposed to stay on this part until I do something? What's that over there? What are these options the game is presenting me? Why should I do them? And I know there are people out there, I even got a comment like this from our Cuphead discussion of someone saying, oh, you just want tutorials to be dumbed down. That's the point. You need a tutorial to be as simple and as straightforward as possible. Anyone who says tutorials should be complicated, you don't want to listen to them when it comes to game design. The tutorial is the time that you are expected to teach the player. And open-ended tutorials are essentially the laziest way of designing a tutorial. And that's not good. Because one, it's going to leave the players confused, and two, it kind of is an example, or it kind of shows onto the designer that they don't know what they're doing when it comes to building this game. Because at the end of the day, the one person who should be able to explain how the game works is the person or persons who built it. And if you can't do that, how is someone supposed to learn your game? And as we've talked about before, for a lot of people, including myself, if I can't figure things out within the first 15 to 30 minutes, I don't care if your game is an amazing one at the 5-hour mark, I'm never going to reach that point. And the open-ended tutorial, it just leaves too much to the player kind of just fumbling around. And as we've said, there has to be a structure to your tutorial, either in the form of a guided example, as in, I'm going to teach the player from here up, 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 up until we complete all the lessons, or organic, as in, I'm going to present everything in the order that the player should learn it. But with open-ended, it's just all over the place. And again, this is very bad for unique games, especially those of the strategy or heavily abstraction genre, when you're presenting the player with all these different options and informations all over the screen, and they have no idea what's going on. And this is very bad if it's your core gameplay loop. If I don't understand what the core gameplay of your title is, something has gone terribly wrong. And as I've said before, and as I'll probably keep saying, you cannot leave tutorials to your community, as in the form of a let's play or someone else making your tutorial. Because at the end of the day, what's in your game is what everyone's going to see. And it really speaks volumes of your game and your skill as a designer if the first thing someone sees when they load up the game is, go watch so-and-so's YouTube video in order to figure out how to play my video game. That does not look highly on a game designer. And this will probably be a shorter critical thought just because of the fact that if we start getting into this and bringing up more in terms of tutorial flow and organization, we'll probably be here for another 20 to 30 minutes. For those of you watching this, here's my question to you. Can you think of examples of open-ended tutorials that just completely stopped you from enjoying the game or even just figuring things out in general? And like I said, for the majority of the games I've seen, they have been in the independent space. Most AAA and AA designers will usually focus on the guided tutorial simply because it is the safest of the three. It may be the most boring, it may be the most structured, but you guarantee that everyone will know the basics by the time that's finished. Now, when it comes to building your tutorial, again, we can easily segue into any number of topics when it comes to tutorial design. But again, at the absolute basic, you need to figure out what it is you're trying to teach a player, and what is the order that someone will need to learn in order to figure out your game. For instance, if I'm playing or I'm trying to learn like Civilization, the first thing you're going to show me is not going to be researching culture. The first thing you're going to show me is how to found a city. And again, however you structure your tutorial, that's the order someone's going to assume is how you play your game. So if you start doing things like step 1, step 5, step 4, step 9, step 3, you're just going to confuse a player. And again, this kind of stuff should be very basic. But far more often than I would like, I see developers fail when it comes to a good tutorial. And as I said a few minutes ago, guided tutorials may be frowned upon by expert players, but they still work for new players to try and learn things. And if you can do an organic tutorial, it is the preferable of the three, but it's also the most complicated. And you can't really do an organic tutorial with heavily abstracted titles, such as RPGs and strategy, because it's very hard to see things one-to-one again in terms of action and response. But to end things on for here, again, like I said, when it comes to open-ended tutorials, they are the hardest and usually the bomb of the three to design. But for those of you watching, can you think of an example, as I just said a few minutes ago, in terms of ones that stopped you from learning? Can you think of an open-ended tutorial that actually worked for you? Let me know in the comments below, but thank you so much for watching. If you have an idea for a future vlog here, let me know in the comments below, but check back for daily discussions on game design here, and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and come back nightly around 10 Eastern for regular game streams. For a collection of my writings as well as weekly podcasts on game design topics, be sure to check out game-wisdom.com. You can follow me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates from me throughout the day. And be sure to check out our Patreon campaign. You can find us on Patreon under GWBycer for ways to not only support Game Wisdom, but you can get access to our Discord channel where we'll talk game design topics, as well as allow you to vote for our Saturday night grab bag stream. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the next video here on the Game Wisdom YouTube channel.